All right, so self-driving backup recovery. So now I get to have a little bit of fun, because I like to tell stories when we talk about technology, and maybe you guys will like my stories, maybe you won't. But self-driving backup recovery, so what is this all about? We think about self-driving, we think about self-driving cars, autonomous trucks, et cetera, right? And all that's being driven through what is essentially machine learning and cognitive decision making, and some artificial intelligence is helping to kind of keep the vehicle on the road and make the decisions as necessary with as little human intervention as possible. Here's the interesting thing, and I'm not going to try to AI wash you. I'm going to give you guys the real truth of what we're doing here. And some of it is AI based, most of it is machine learning based. But we're going to go into what this actually means. The thing I love about this topic is that AI and machine learning is going to take this image where we see someone texting and driving. And the statement when you look at this is no, don't text, drive. And that's going to change through these sort of artificial intelligence changes to no, don't drive, text. That's the type of stuff that's going to happen. Those menial, rudimentary, repetitive tasks are going to go away. And that's what IT is demanding of their vendors, of their partners. Help us get those remedial tasks out of the way, change the way we think of what a picture like this looks like. So that's what we've begun doing. So here's the great thing. Internet of Things buzzword. Oh, wow, I didn't even get a chuckle out of you guys.
I didn't hear you. What'd you say?
I said Internet of Things, buzzword.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. In the session before, I got a pretty good chuckle from the part.
It's not funny if you explain it.
Rule number one of humor.
So if you think Internet of Things, obviously it's sensor data that's all collected, managed, and you try to cull it for something interesting to make it a smarter decision, right? Well, what is a backup system? If you think about it, if you really break it down, a backup system is really nothing more than an Internet of Things system for your data environment. The agents touch hosts, IP addresses, we understand network bandwidth, performance, block change, disk speed, we understand uptime, downtime, and when everything is running. And we collect all of that data. It's all in every customer's CommServe database, they have all this information collected, and it's really interesting pattern information that we can collect and start to look at. Now here's the interesting thing, right? You take all of that information and feedback, you can start actually processing against it to define what is the new normal state. So define a baseline for success. If a customer wants an outcome of an RPO and RTO that is X and Y, how do you know if you're actually able to achieve that? You have to be smart enough to know that the way that you're actually moving data throughout your system is fast enough to achieve that said outcome. Then more importantly, you have to be able to identify, is that success for what I want? And what is an outlying condition? Meaning, when do I start to see jobs, events, backups, restores that are no longer falling within what that RPO or RTO or that expected outcome should be? That's all data that can be collected. So we've actually, for the last 18 months, been working through more algorithms and enhancements to tie in machine learning code to start defining what success and normal operation is for a customer and allow them to define the outcome and let the software then shift and make changes to better achieve that outcome.
Hey, Don, on that one, so you got me thinking here. Would that be able to do automatic restores if it detects an anomaly? If I'm thinking ransomware, all of a sudden the baseline is set that our data has been backed up because all of a sudden these files all start changing.
Yeah.
And then it could put a pause on and say nope, and then automatically restore back? Or is it strictly autonomous from a push standpoint and not a restore or detection?
There are a few words scarier than automatic restore.
I just whispered that to myself. I said, that is scary.
We don't do that today, but let me walk you through where we're at. And I think what you'll see is, this is all about, if you can define what normal operation is, and what success is, and what outlying conditions are, you can now switch from managing everything to just give me the exceptions, give me the anomalies that I care about, that is forcing me off the direction or the path that I want, so I can put everything right back on that path of success. And some of it does tie into ransomware, and we'll talk you through it and show you what we mean by that. Because ultimately, it's all of this that is self-driving back.
But what you were saying, like, you cannot put enough emphasis on the importance of this. Once you've baselined any complex system, all you care about is the delta of the mass.
That's right.
It simplifies the complex environment. I mean, this is happening in security. I mean, every possible complex system in the world is now finally starting to get this. And the power of this, it's actually kind of hard in most cases to imagine the benefits you're going to see in it.
Can we quote you on that?
Yeah, the problem,
That's spot on.
the problem is you could describe, and we email you the list of all the jobs that failed last night as this. And
as very
and you,
rudimentary.
and you better be doing more than that.
So I'm glad you bring that up. So if you think about machine learning algorithms, and I apologize, I once remembered the name of this algorithm. Begins with an A and it has a long name to it that basically defines what machine learning is. That's what we've put into the product. But I have now, for some reason, forgot it out of my brain, probably because I didn't read it because it was told to me. I'll try to read it next time and give you the guys the name. But essentially, we have a couple different algorithms that we're using to start define and identify patterns. And the cool thing is, by defining these patterns, we know what a success pattern looks like, and then to your point, what is an outlying pattern? And that means that we have support for seasonality, for different file activity on that seasonality, job runtime, and even event activity. So what does that mean? Well, that means that if I'm a customer, I can define what my RPO and RTO is, define my plan, gold, silver, bronze, or even get more complex with what you need with your environment. Define what the operational window is, and then just say, go. And as everything starts to execute, and obviously the first runtime probably won't have as much smarts as maybe the 100th, but every time you back up, every time you restore, the system gets smarter. And before you know it, the system will start changing priorities for the jobs that are running slower than others or that need more resources in order to complete. Or even predict if you want to add resources to a job to allow its performance to jump. These are all the things we're tying into some of the machine learning and pattern automation so that the customers don't have to play that Tetris game of, oh, I need the SAP server now to start at 3:30 in the morning versus 3:45 because I need the extra 15 minutes to get the job to be done. No, you set the window, we start trending what the job performance typically is using those same sort of pattern matches, and the system will shift it for you to make sure that you can achieve those goals.
And this is learning off of my data, my
Yeah.
activity,
Your
not
activity.
everybody's.
Correct.
Yeah,
So it's
no, good.
and so that's the key thing is you could have one environment, you would have another one, you'll have another one, you'll have another one. They will all operate differently. But the machine learning will be basically personal to you. And it will figure out how to do things differently based upon your own operation.
But Steve, I mean, not to drag us in, but this comes down to a one-off from what you said before, which is here's an example of we're going to get to a point where there are going to be hardware paths to offset, to accelerate, to help this that will have to be on the on-site hardware if you are learning from your own data, and so that could be the kind of hardware catch that people could worry about.
But if I need more backup performance, I can just add more nodes.
Yeah, but it could be a specialized, ASIC that that benefits the sort of technology that we're talking about here.
Knowing Commvault, highly unlikely.
But if you need, do you need more backup performance or do you need more restore performance?
Well, that's a whole other story the folks at Data
Indeed.
Domain never like to talk about.
Indeed. But that's also something that we'll get on when we start talking about your state of recovery readiness too.
Okay, so going back to the last slide.
Yeah.
I love this. This is where the world the backup world needs to go to. This is my policy. Enforce my policy.
Bingo.
I don't care about jobs anymore.
Right.
But, and this is wonderful, until I run out of resources.
Correct.
Then I need all sorts of other, I need to have all sorts of other methods to tell you when you can't do what I told you should do every night.
Yep.
This is what you should do next.
And
What
that is
do I
why
care
we
about?
bring in
And all the way
things
down.
like prediction based.
Oh yeah, no, it's got to be.
Based on your current changes and
Shoot this guy in the head, and then if that
Yeah.
doesn't work, shoot that guy in the head, and then if that doesn't work, shoot this other guy in the head.
So basically providing disk library growth in any of the infrastructure components that allow you to achieve that, we have the ability to alert well in advance of when we think those dates are going to occur to give you as a customer a chance to react. Now, again, like anything, the more you do it, the smarter it gets, the better it can react. But ultimately, to your point, you need to know as a user, hey, is it the jobs are too slow, or is I just don't have enough resources? I need to go get more resources before this becomes super critical. And that's absolutely, we're trying to take that component.
Will it predict any kind of throughput bottlenecks?
Yes, it will actually highlight the average performance of a job over time and showcase what those are. It won't go as far as telling you where the bottleneck is. If you tie it in with our log analytics that we talked about 2 years ago, you can start to have some more intelligence on where that bottleneck is actually occurring.
Yeah, I mean, you have the data there. You have in the machine and the data movers. You know what your network interfaces look like.
Yep.
Right. You kind of know what your disk queues look like. So I'm surprised that you didn't go there.
Well, so dig into this more when you have a chance to walk around the show floor, because there are some interesting reports that you can see exactly what we're tracking on job runtime, reasons why jobs may be taking longer runtime. We'll even do things like the dreaded, the services stopped for some reason, so that's why the backup isn't running. And it will actually send a restart without your knowledge if you give it the permission to do so. So those are all some of the, the small quick fixes that don't require administrator help to see if you can get the actual job done.
Hey, Don, I'm still stuck on this whole baseline and normal thing, because those two, they're mutually exclusive to my mind, because first you get a baseline, and then there's things that are normal. You might have a whacked environment, and you create this thing that you now call normal.
But if you define your objective as an RPO, RTO, and you start doing backups, if you're already missing those points, it'll tell you, hey, you're all red.
Okay,
good. Your baseline is not what you want.
I think that's the part that it's like, we're in Nashville. I use a guitar analogy. It's like tuning my guitar to myself.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I'm in tune, and I go play with this guy, and he's in 440, and I'm in whatever the hell I'm in.
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense.
So that's exactly it.
The baseline has to be relative and personal. I mean,
and
it's also dynamic, because if your baseline,
it has to be dynamic. It absolutely has to be dynamic.
You So the next piece I show is this.
Okay, before you get to that,
Okay.
I want this warning for my backup window.
Yeah.
Your backup window has 12 minutes left.
You can
In 6 months, you're going to eat those 12 minutes and you're going to be dead.
This alert will come up, and you can schedule how you want it based upon the threshold of what space you're running out of. So it's not just sorry, you're like 5 megs out of space. Oh,
No,
talking about
but I need time as well as time as well as space.
So here's the great thing. Say there's a server. Say there's a server that's continually running slower and slower and slower and slower. It will actually automatically start bumping that server further in the backup window to whatever point it can.
Yeah, but I don't want it to start backing that server up at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
Right. Well, so that's why you define your operational window to start at whatever the time is.
But get exactly what I'm asking for.
Yeah, I do.
When I have a 12-hour backup window and my backups don't complete until 11 hours and 20 minutes, then I don't want it to be 11 hours and 20 minutes. I want it to be my backups don't complete, and if I extract, my backup times have been growing. And if I extrapolate that, then on this date, I'm going to exceed my time, and I want you to tell me 120 days in advance because I got to order 2 more nodes.
Yeah.
And purchasing takes 30 days, and you take 90 days. And
So dig into some of that stuff on the show floor. We can show you some very interesting things. It may not be
12 minutes
100%
left.
of what you want, but it's going to be pretty darn close.
Nice.
All right.
2 points, kitty.
So you guys see this? So if you've ever used Commvault in older prior versions, you've known what this is. This is the event viewer. Now, can you pick out the important piece of information? I can't either, because you feel like this. And that's where this becomes more important, because suddenly you can go down from might be 48,000 events in a given day to 11. Now, these are the 11 things you need to check out. Go help us, find out why ClusterFS, the data transfer, the following job is not progressing as it should. Okay. Now, instead of spending all that time going through 40-some-odd thousand alerts or looking at failed backup reports, I'm actually getting my events that are anomalies on the fly.
Nice.
Even better, it's not just the events, and this is a showcase, by the way, in the command center, but I can also see the jobs that are actually running as an outlier. They're already falling outside of what the expected condition is. So no more am I looking at the thousands of jobs that are running in my organization. I'm just going to look for in this case, 7 that happen to be the outlying conditions. It becomes a whole lot easier to manage all of a sudden. And if you want to know why or where you're seeing different, crazy anomalies, we track that for you as well. And here's the interesting thing. So that file anomaly, we can start tracking even what's normal and change rates on the systems. VMs, physical servers, databases, doesn't matter. So if we see an unusual number of updates in blocks, file folders, etc., if it's outside of a norm, we'll probably send an alert on it. If we happen to see the application size is way much bigger than it should be, we'll let you know about it. Because it may not be a virus. It may just be somebody re-indexed the database and it completely flipped the blocks upside down, and now you're sending a whole lot more information across the wire, right? But also, and we talked about this last year, we've put honeypot files inside of our code. You guys know what a honeypot file is, right? I like to liken it to what Amazon's done to their drivers, a honeypot box. Let's see if this thing gets delivered or not, what happens to it. Same sort of idea. If the box doesn't get to the space it's supposed to be, or the file gets turned over, now you really have a problem, because nothing should ever touch this file. And that keys in a really interesting alert on you might have some really potential malware activity occurring on these systems.
So are these Where do the honeypot files come from?
We place them as a part of the code that we
You
we
seed
put on
them?
systems. Yeah, you got it. So, talking about ransomware, and this is one of my funny things I like to kind of point out. It won't happen to you if you have no people, no technology, or no IT changes. Sounds like every customer I've ever talked to, right? So we know it's not if, but when. And this is what most people think ransomware is coming from. But in reality, ransomware is not coming from this person. While that person on the dark web might be creating it and whatnot, the real threat is this person. This is Christine Foster. She's my mother. This is your threat.
Hi, Mom.
And by the way, she's awesome. She's great. She's the nicest person known to man. She's actually fairly technology savvy, but she has a problem not clicking on attachments from people that she shouldn't be clicking on attachments on.
They need to stop labeling cute kitties, and I would not click on them anymore.
In fact, I'm sure you guys all know this, right? I mean, it probably happens to me at least once a month. I get 2 questions. Hey, how's the job? Hey, how's the family? I got a question about my computer. And that usually starts the, oh boy, what'd you do? So the funny thing is, it's the good people doing bad things or making mistakes. That's the security risk. No matter how good your perimeter threat is, that's your security risk. And that's where things like this can become very, very important to have. And of course, beyond that, then it's defining what your state of recovery readiness is. So if you can show me what my RPO, RTOs are and how well I'm meeting them at any given time across my environment, when the VP of IT or the CIO or the CEO says, hey, my friend just got hit by ransomware, what's our state of recovery readiness? And here's a report that shows, hey, we're 100% on RTO and we're missing the boat on RPO, but we think we can solve that. Because you click into this and it gives you some options and ways you can improve. So this is the benefit of taking AI, specifically machine learning and some smart code, and starting to shift that into defining what the state of normal is, what outlying conditions are, and how you can better achieve what those end results are. And by the way, Bill talked about the Commvault Command Center. This is an example of basically the dashboard that drives the Commvault Command Center. Now, this is the full admin view, so you have every option known to man on this. But as you can see, it's breaking things down in a really easy way to see where you might have issues. And from within this, you can start looking at infrastructure, operations, events, anomaly jobs. It becomes really clean and clear. So again, this is something else I say, when you have a chance, dig into this. It's pretty cool and simplified stuff that makes it a lot easier to manage based on an exception. The one last thing, we have tied in voice recognition into the software. So, and it's done securely. And I know you're shaking your head. That was the first thing I did too, and I'm like, really? But it actually is kind of neat. If you have this system.
Ask Alexa restore my SAP database all.
You do?
Universities are using Alexas now, so hey, why can't we use them in our backup and storage, right?
There you go.
Yeah, and
it's
somebody in
secure
the data
and ties
center is going to
directly
go,
into
the
our open
stupidest
APIs.
thing would be to say, Siri, restore my data. Oh, crap.
No, but the thing is we all joke about this, but this is the goal. I mean, everyone's modeling all this after Star Trek. I mean, the whole point of AI, the whole point of all this is to have conversational interfaces with systems. So, I mean, we can laugh at how silly it may seem now, and laugh at all the mistakes we all make, but the truth of the matter is why would you be doing all this artificial intelligence if you don't plan to talk to the artificial intelligence?
No, I think the more we joke around the restore and backup, I think the more applicable solution or capability is to be able to say, Alexa, what is the trends in North America over this data set is, I think, the more.
So during the
Absolutely.
GoX, our VP of Engineering, Rajiv Kothanthral, will do a presentation, and pay attention because he'll have an example of how this works, and it goes very much along the lines of what you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Yeah, and when Alexa says, oh, you want to restore? And I have to say, Picard 7239, that's a step too far.
Yeah, agreed. I think I'm going to let probably Deepak and some of the product management teams, when they show you some demonstrations, highlight what we're doing and how we can orchestrate VM provisioning, sub 1 minute RPO RTOs, how we can do things like live sync direct and VAIO integration. We'll dive deep in with that with him. And so I'll skip this one, because I think you guys know that we can move, manage, and use data in the cloud pretty well. There's some really cool orchestration things that we can do. We'll be covering some of this in part of the keynote as well. But you'll be able to have the slides and dig into it more if you want to post the presentation. I will show you this, because this is some of the cool, interesting hypervisor and application conversions that we can drive. This is on the fly, VMware to any of these stacks, on the fly, Azure to Azure to Azure stack, Azure stack to Azure stack, AWS to Azure or AWS, all really interesting conversion stacks we can do even down on the application side. So it makes customers lifting and shifting infrastructures to the cloud or to another infrastructure Really, really important. And we've actually had partners that have used this technology in the LifeSync space to do data center migrations, complete data center migrations. It's also what enables things like the simplified DR. So this is all built into the product. And you can talk to Deepak on each of these different things. And I think he's going to dive into it. I just don't know where he went. All right, Commvault Activate. This is all about knowing your data. This is like we had said. This is the product that you can buy that will allow you to start to crawl all of your data information and allow you to actually have some value from it, from a inventory, organization, review, and even act in automating your processes. So I'm not going to go heavy deep into all of this. These are things you can also kind of take away from the Go show floor, but just to show ways that we can profile and map information across the globe, start to organize exactly what that means, if it's PII, if it has certain sort of private data streams or data patterns inside of it. And then from there, provide a way that you can actually start to execute, review, assign risk scoring, delete, move, or if you're linking this in with Commvault Complete, archive, move to the cloud, etc. And of course, finally, automate the procedures you just walked through. So there's a lot more to this than what I just showed in those screenshots. But Commvault Activate is that piece of software now that can crawl the data sets, data sources, understand what you have and where, and make sure it's being stored, leveraged, or utilized in the right way, and also identify what sort of risk you might have. One of the first application that we have in this portfolio is sensitive data governance. That does a lot of that risk scoring and understanding of where data lives. Mark? The service delivery integration is really all about how we tie in with ServiceNow. So just for a second, imagine if you could take your data operations and link it directly into your ITSM operations. It's essentially what we're doing and working with ServiceNow. And it's not just, hey, do a backup or do a restore like some vendors talk about with ServiceNow integration. This is actually full-fledged integration with their framework. Before we built this and released it in this past quarter, we had a customer in Europe, large bank, large environment, that saw about 60 plus changes in a given day. We were able to fully automate those together with their ServiceNow environment, to which they said they probably saved about 3 FTEs daily in just handling change requests in their data environment for how they drive operations. Pretty impactful stuff. It just drives more optimization for people and more resource efficiency. And what that looks like essentially is taking some of our different command center views, it ties it directly into what ServiceNow is doing, as well as linking together the underlying API framework of when tickets get generated, actions get generated, they can all be done and driven from the actual ServiceNow navigator. So there's some really cool background APIs that we're calling and orchestrating together to make that operation more seamless. And again, if the customer, much like we're talking cloud and DR, if it's only 90% of what they want, the great part is more customization can be wrapped around this whole entire time. All right, the hyperscale appliance. So we talked about this briefly. I think you guys get the value. We hit that point already. You know about the hyperscale appliance we have today. By the way, do you like our new bezels?
Ooh.
So these are the new bezels. This is what happens when marketing gets more involved in how
I hate bezels.
how we're designing our. What's that?
Does any of that blink?
I do believe there are colors on the outside. Where's the fill and where's
What
the
do you
color?
say
when
in
those
braille?
things power on? Where's the color when those things power on? Through the bezel, but nothing really blinks necessarily, other than you see the hard drives flash and whatnot.
That's an upgrade.
Yeah,
It's
so it's more
scary
just
to me, the whole trend in the tech
an
industry,
upcharge.
that we ever even have a bezel conversation.
Yeah, we move on.
I don't get it.
Moving
The
on.
number of engineering hours dedicated to bezels.
Moving on.
Moving on. All right, it's fine. So the point here is, by the way, with the current HS 1300, our hyperscale appliance that we released last year, it's now taken on 12 terabyte drives, so its capacity has grown, I think, to 176, something like that on raw capacity. We've also now released, and hearing from our partners, there's a lot of remote offices that just simply need a 5 to 10, 15 terabyte capacity appliance to do backups, and then centrally bring that back to the data center. So we've listened, we've created what we're calling the Remote Office 1100, or the RO 1100, that does just that. It's not scale out, this is scale up, RAID 5 controllers, so you have some disk redundancy, but it allows us to quickly tie this together with a hyperscale centralized node, and you can deploy those at remote sites. So for the customers that want to buy an all-in-one package, done and done, there you go.
And all the risk, I mean, when you're doing this kind of smaller remote nodes, all this risk analysis, being able to look into file behavior and so forth, this is all still...
Yep, all part of it.
Honestly, that's where sometimes that kind of information is the most valuable.
In the remote office.
Is in
when
the
you're away
little-
from the corporate.
yeah.
Yes, yes. So that's all part of Complete. Another key, or all the things we're talking about is a part of Complete. So that still ties in just like that. The new one that's going to be announced in December, so it's kind of a preview, is we're adding in what is going to be a 432 terabyte, up to 432 terabyte raw capacity hyperscale appliance. This helps us close the gap for customers that want to buy everything through Commvault up to that reference architecture, Cisco UCS, HPE Apollo, the much larger density form factor that we do reference architectures with partners with. And so that's all from Commvault. So you basically now have an appliance family that covers the remote office. It will cover the, call it your typical medium data center, and then your enterprise deployments that will go from 174 terabytes up to 432.
Those are raw capacity?
Those are raw capacities, correct. Correct. I left them at raw just because it's easier that way.
And when you deploy,
There's 27 numbers you can pick. You just
I don't want to do the
one.
base 2 to base 10. Let's just talk raw and be done with it, right?
the typical overhead, because it's erasure coding, I think, right?
So erasure coding on the 2 hyperscale appliances, remote office is RAID 5.
So that's RAID 5.
So yeah, you basically lose 33% on erasure coding.
And what about on your RAID 5? What's your
It's a 3 drives in it, right? So it's a third. You lose a third on the RAID 5 setup too, I believe, right? On the Commvault Complete Backup as a Service offering. And this is something that I would, again, probably maybe seek out Mr. David No over there in the corner if you want to wave your hand. Also, a gentleman by the name of Sabarnath Rao also helps drive our Commvault as a Service offerings. But what you see that we're doing here is we have some market space plays as well as some Commvault offerings from ourselves that we're offering to customers. So within Commvault Backup Recovery as a Service, which is the Complete Backup Recovery offering, we're going to be providing per VM recovery for VMs in the cloud or on premises that they want to back up to the cloud. So that is where ourselves or a service provider will drive that execution for the customer, the outcome. In the centerpiece, we have the Azure apps, AWS apps. You can obviously tie that in any of the different services that we support for protecting either per socket or terabytes of those apps. And then also the same side on the per user for O365, Google G Suite, Salesforce. That's the first foray in. There is an offering that will allow you to do Commvault Complete Backup and Recovery as a Service for everything. We do have that as an offer that we put through partners and service providers and help them build as well. But to go into that detail, we'll probably need more than the 30 seconds that I've already overrun to get to that point. So, leave you with this final quote. I love this quote. Good question?
I didn't see anything about disaster recovery as a service.
So the DR as a service is an option, I believe, in a couple of different things. Do you want to? It's not there yet because this is the first foray in. So to his point, it's coming. Expect more in the future.
Okay, and if I use you to back up on premises and I then decide to use you to back up my O365, 2 separate consoles?
Yes. In the future, no. But today, yes. We're working on merging those together essentially. So I love this quote because this also drives what we're trying to do with powerful simplicity. Help customers realize that, hey, buying siloed solutions, when you start to look at it, take a step back, it makes zero sense.
Do you guys offer any sort of backups associated with Kubernetes or any container environments?
So we support Kubernetes and Docker today. It's basically at the container level, and of course, depending on how the data is being structured, usually it's still stored in some form of a scaled out location. We can crawl and protect the data as well. I have very few customers that want the containers backed up because they're typically stateless or they're not important. It's the data that's important. But we do have those options. We can protect them if you're driving containers.